Michelle Oliver with Protect X International, and we are a consulting firm that deals with 4 pillars of protection and solutions in the area of water and air and surfaces and human touch. And I am so excited today to have Patrick Verweis on with us, and we're going to be addressing the issue of water. So with schools opening up in August, this is a really important conversation. It's very timely, something that needs to be addressed immediately. And Patrick, I'd like to just start, if you would, by sharing a little bit about the pre-COVID status of facilities, because these schools have been sitting there empty for quite some time now. And maybe you could share a little bit about the pre-COVID status and then the disruption of COVID and where we stand now and what is important for us to take a look at.
Sure, I'd love to. And thanks again for having us. It's so important that we look at it from more of a timeline standpoint, Michelle. And
Mhm.
so if we look at pre-COVID, we can even go back 10 plus years. And we saw this wonderful shift. And so often there's these domino effects that happen, right? So we had this wonderful shift where the industry, the plumbing industry, as exciting as that might sound, but there is a plumbing industry. And the plumbing industry looked at the fact that there was water fountains that when we were kids were being used, but kids weren't using them anymore. So they decided that as we saw this need for more sustainability, that it would be a great idea to basically evolve what we would consider a traditional water fountain, or what the industry calls a bubbler, into a bottle filler, or what we now call it is a hydration station. So you have an option. And so what we often see though with those domino effects are variables that were just unplanned. It's not that anybody didn't look at the detail. It's just that as things evolve and the world around us changes, variables present themselves, and sometimes those variables will put us in a position where we no longer have a complete solution. So like I mentioned, as the industry evolved, they also started filtering the water. So now kids and adults, like as we go through the airport, right, or we go to work and go to the gym, we can now carry our Yetis with us, or our hydration flasks, and we could fill them up with nice clean water, and we no longer have to carry single-use plastic water bottles. So A plus to everybody, right? There was a great intention, and we're heading in the right direction. But the issue that happened was, we as an industry, or quite frankly as a globe, right, we relied on what was the common standard for drinking water, filters, which was NSF 53. And so, not to get too technical for everybody, but that's a carbon filter. So the example I give people all the time is, it's very similar to what you have in your refrigerator, or like the Brita filter if you have a pitcher. And the design there is that we want to make sure lead is taken care of. We want to make sure that the water tastes great. But the deficiency is the fact that it doesn't do anything to help with bacteria, and specifically bacteria like E. coli or crypta, or things like Legionella. And so, going back to your original question, pre-COVID, we were brought into a situation at a huge university, in the Chicago area. We'll leave it at that. But a massive, top tier university with a huge engineering department that happens to be right on a lake, and their colors for their sports happen to be purple and black, if anybody wants to connect the dots there. So that team was actually exposed to an issue that really put them out in front of the entire industry, the entire nation, and that was water quality. So because they have the ability to, the students have the ability to test water, and the professors have the ability to test water, a simple project of, hey, you know what? Are we sure that the water quality coming out of that bottle filler is really safe, turned into a public relations nightmare. And I always stop to say that there was nobody, we don't know of anybody that is connected to this issue that got sick. But if we look at how that filter works, just like your refrigerator, it needs to be changed routinely. And the reason why it needs to be changed routinely is because carbon is designed to remove chlorine. That's what helps makes the water taste good. But our city puts chlorine in the water, right, to help with disinfectant, so we keep our bacteria levels safe. So anyway, fast forward, when they tested the water, it turned out to be positive for a number of things, but one of the more alarming things was Legionella. So in the grand scheme of the world we live in today, that group of students and professor didn't go to the university and say, hey guys, let's look at this problem. They shared it on social media. So the pressure on Northwestern, the pressure on that university was tremendous.
Mhm.
And as a result, there was a lawsuit that was settled at a court, all that kind of stuff that happens. But the result that changed the game for all of us is they hired an independent consultant. They were they had to hire an independent consultant, which ultimately tested all the water hydration stations or drinking fountains across the entire campus. And to give you a perspective, Michelle, that was just under 500. It's a huge university. And of those, 2/3 of them also tested positive for Legionella. So it went from a potential issue to a systemic issue. So that firm then was flabbergasted by these results. And so they went out to all of their customers and they tested over 1,000 more, Texas, Arizona, Louisiana, Illinois, all the way up through Wisconsin. And in every single case, they found positive traces of Legionella in the drinking fountain. And so I'm not going to get into why all that happened, but that was happening pre-COVID. And the reason that was happening pre-COVID was because the units just were designed where bacteria could form and grow. And Legionella is just another form of bacteria. Well, fast forward, once the pandemic hit, a new variable came into it. So our team had worked really hard, and we've got a really comprehensive program, and we're working with schools and universities all across the US and working to grow internationally, independent of COVID, to solve this issue, because the reality is that a better filter is all that's needed, and a filter that's designed to do more than people are aware of being possible, which is what our force field's able to do. So anyway, not to be too long-winded, to bring a conclusion, what happened as a result of COVID is our CDC here in the States was so concerned about surface contamination that they decided that a best practice would be to basically cordon these off. And in so many instances, it's as silly as they putting a garbage bag around them. Now, any of us from the plumbing industry knows that there's a couple of key things that need to happen when you're dealing with bacteria. One is you need safe disinfectant levels. The other is you need to keep your water within a safe temperature range. And the last is that it's always best to keep that water moving. Well, now as a variable, right, introduced to an equation that none of us would have ever seen, we have created what they call dead legs all over every one of our buildings that has a bottle filler. And so we started on this mission back in June of last year and put together a bunch of guidelines to help folks safely reopen. And we worked with all of our key customers to come up with plans so that they could disinfect these units and then install our force field technology to ensure that the water is not only great tasting, but also safe. Fast forward, we've been sitting on our hands for a number of months, waiting for that time, which is now. So we've we've got our core customers have a plan, and we rely on teams like yours to help us grow that audience so that we could more than likely introduce them to a concern that wasn't on their radar, but quickly will be, because when you look at it from just a pure makes sense standpoint, it's an obvious concern that should be added to their safely reopening plan as a result of bringing people back from extended periods away.
Yeah, so that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's gone from a, wow, this water tastes awful. How can we make it taste better? To very serious, real health risks. And I think that facility managers and superintendents and everyone involved with these facilities, there's so much on their plate. They're thinking a lot about surfaces and air and all of these elements. So it's easy to overlook it, right? They have
It
no idea.
really is.
They need to be educated, and that's what you're bringing to the table, and that's what we are bringing to the table. Going in and having these conversations with people and sharing and educating them so that because as parents and as professionals, how important is it to get the kids back in an environment where they can actually have a high quality education? That's
It's so
top of
critical.
mind for us, right? And
It
then,
really is. And if you add on top of it, sorry, one other thing to add on top of that, that
mm,
heightened pressure that is on our facilities partners, um, it's definitely at the school level, is that there's constantly a constraining budget.
right.
So I would tell you that if we sat with any one of these people, they had an unlimited budget, they likely wouldn't make a bad decision
Mhm.
because they have a true passion and a drive to do exactly what you mentioned, right? They're in their chosen career paths because they love it. And here though they're often forced to compromise because there's only a certain budget they can work with, and they're moving the pieces around the chessboard. And that's the other area that we've been able to greatly help our partners with, which is coming in with solutions that fit within a what I call a maintenance budget, so that we're not always looking at how do we steal from the capital budget to make this happen when we're talking about just a matter of months before the plan has to be implemented.
Right, that's hugely important, obviously. Do you want to share a little bit more about the actual solution and and then the budget as well? Because additionally, like this affects everyone, right? Not just the
Mhm.
children, but the teachers and all of us at home saying, how are we going to get anything done without our kids in an environment where they are able to really be educated? And will they be safe? It's such basic, significant issues that we're up against. So if you could
It
share a
is.
little bit about both of those things, it would be great.
Of course. And then I'd also add the other thing is that when given a chance, people are always going to want to do the right thing.
Yep.
And we can't overlook the sustainability factor of this idea that, when I worked in an office full time, I always had filtered water, and so when you're in a school environment as a teacher, you've got such limited breaks as the administrative staff, these little breaks. And so knowing that you can go to the hydration station that's in the hallway outside your classroom and get this amazingly delicious and safe water versus always going to this staff area or conference rooms or those things, the convenience when given the opportunity allows people to have such a better day. But to go back to your original question, what happened with that university was very unique in its in the manner in which it played out, because they were in a position at that time where they didn't have another option. So they, like I said, they were so far out in front that the industry didn't know that that was a problem yet, because they were reliant on a standard of water quality of water filters, which they felt like if we met that standard, well, then we were doing our best job for those people, exactly like you mentioned. And so as we went through that process, first, obviously, we pilot. So we use our filtration to show that it works. We did that 10 times over a 3-month period. And then we went back in and we had a conversation about selling filters that would be retrofit. So we didn't have a solution that could be embedded. At the time, we just had our point of use filters, which we use in hospitals and hotels, and typically just live under a sink where people wouldn't see them.
Mhm.
But being such a prominent university, they loved the solution. They were confident in the ROI model that we had built, um, but they didn't like the fact that the filter was exposed. And then I often kid, the head of marketing actually told me my filter was ugly, and I took offense to that.
Yeah.
I kid that, I don't pick on other people's children. Why would you pick on mine? But she had such a valid point. Not even thinking about vandalism, but aesthetically, nobody wants to see that. And it challenged me to then challenge my engineers to come up with a better solution. And they did. And so we went back in, and now we actually have a fully tooled retrofit option for those existing filters. So when you look at it from a capital standpoint, and especially as we look at COVID, I can't tell you how many districts I'm talking to that are looking at multi-million dollar bid processes to replace these units, because they are aware now that there's a bacteria concern inside them. There is no shortage of industry press, ASPE seminars, CDC guidelines. I mean, the
Right.
concern is now front and center, that it's not just surfaces, right? Because we're going to do our due diligence there. But as they open these back up, bacteria is a primary concern in these. And so we're able to so going back to Northwestern, they challenged us to come up with a solution that was completely retrofit into the existing units. And then we built a flush protocol so that the maintenance staff can go in, quickly disinfect the unit, and then install a firewall filter, or we call force field filter, which will then ensure safety going forward of your microbiologicals, but also of your metals. So lead and iron are also taken out at the same time. So being able to do that is really, really special. Take it to another level. They had done an ROI study with that independent consultant that showed under the old program, before they knew we existed, like I mentioned, they were in a position where they quite frankly didn't have a solution. So their solution was a maintenance-based solution. So that consulting team came in and studied the problem, and their recommendation to them, which is part of that sealed lawsuit I mentioned, was that the hydration station itself would need to be cleaned and disinfected once a month, with the filters being changed. So when we met the team at the university, they actually had 2 full-time people that all they did was disinfect, clean, and change out bottle filler filters.
Wow.
So beyond the cost associated with that, right, and the impact to their staff, right, because we all don't have an unlimited staff that we could just keep hiring people, right? The bigger issue is that that consulting team, after they started working with our product, and like I mentioned, we went through those 10 phases of pilot, they were able to show that our filters were still just as efficacious at the full 1-year mark. So our filters are recommended to be changed every 9 to 12 months unless there's a pressure drop. But now when you look at it specifically for this environment, higher education, K-12 schools, we all know that the key to maintenance is, can you get it done in the summertime? Because when the students are in session, that's when everybody is busiest. You don't have time to change filters. And so by being able to take it to that level, from an ROI standpoint, our filters are actually cheaper, just apples to apples, not counting the labor and all the other stuff. So filter to filter is cheaper. And oh, by the way, you change 1 instead of 12. It was a no-brainer to the team at Northwestern. So that was our first win. But if you also go back, a part I didn't mention about what Northwestern found is 2/3 of those units had tested positive for Legionella, but 1/3 of the units had no filters at all. So it showed that it was actually safer not to filter the water. Why? Because it left the chlorine residual in. And so going back to the unique relationship that we had developed with the facilities team, by the time we got around to introducing this final product, they were ready to go. The head of facilities then challenged me to also come up with equipment, because he now had a capital project. He had 1/3, or it was roughly 100 or so off the top of my head, units that he now needed to change, because he now knew that they didn't have filters. Before this project, they had no real handle how many they even had, no less if they had filters, and forget about the idea, did they have a handle on a routine maintenance program to change those filters out? So you see how this perfect storm all came together for them. So they challenged us, and then we actually were able to put an OEM partnership together with a company called Murdoch Manufacturing. And we now make full equipment, ADA compliant, indoor, outdoor bottle fillers and bubblers, a number of different lines. But what I'm so proud about is by including our filter in their unit, we now have the only product that we're aware of globally on the market that carries NSF 53, which is important, but also 42 and 61. We're the only ones that we're aware of that are able to handle both metals and microbiologicals at the same time, as well as endotoxins, trace pharmaceuticals, all the other stuff we talk about. So it was really special for us. So that's what Northwestern did for us, all well before the pandemic. Now, what you were alluding to in terms of the story I told you the other day is where we're going. So like I mentioned, we've come in contact, or we've been approached, or our relationships have brought us into meetings with a number of schools now that are looking at significant capital programs to at least open some of the hydration stations within the building. And the target is August, when kids are back in school. Now, kids are back in school right now, obviously, in the majority of the country, but they can't react to it. Their hands are completely full with everything they have going on. So you have superintendents that are saying, look, we need to have those steps back to normalcy, like you were mentioning. One of them is our students should be able to get water, especially in gyms or key areas of the building. So we recently, in January, were brought into a situation at a very, very large school district in the suburbs of Atlanta, one of the largest in the state, public school district. And when we met them, it was because our team down there picked up a RFQ, or request for quote, that was out as part of a bid proposal, where they were looking to change out the bottle fillers, so that they were safe when the kids came back in August. Now, to give you a perspective, in talking to their facilities team, they have 3 bottle fillers per floor per building, plus common areas, plus the gym and cafeteria and such. And so, because of budget constraints, the superintendent this was part of the superintendent's plan to safely bring kids back to school. She is phenomenal. I give her so much credit because, like you said, she wasn't just concerned about air and surface. She
Mhm.
knew that kids needed safe water too. And she takes her, like, these, again, I get goosebumps because our partners really do take their job so seriously and have the best intentions. And so she challenged her team to do it. And so when that RFQ went out, it was for $3.4 million. But Michelle, that was only to replace 1 per floor and
Mhm.
in some of the common areas, because they knew they didn't have the capital budget to do them all, not between now and August. So fast forward, when we met the team, because of our unique solutions, we were able to put together a filter replacement program for them that was under $900,000 to do
Wow.
every single one throughout the entire campus. Throughout the entire district. So now kids, teachers didn't have to walk all the way down the hallway, or you didn't have to worry about going from the cafeteria to the gym to get your water. It was natural. And again, like we said, we want to try to get people back to normalcy as soon as possible. And then what we did is we worked with them to put together a capital budget where now they can, over the next 3 years, update all of that equipment to nice stainless steel, sensor driven, state of the art product that has our filtration in, that gives you the 53, 42, and 61. So you see how we were able to go in, and in that particular case, they identified the need. So it was really good for us to come in and help them. And the biggest win is now that superintendent who is able to go back to the school board, but ultimately to the community, and say, here's my comprehensive plan. And it includes water quality, because that's so critical for our students today. It really was a win-win.
This is amazing. These 2 case studies really address every single aspect of the concerns about water. So you've shared this in such a brilliant way, and we're addressing the quality, we're addressing the safety, we're addressing the cost. The expense is enormous, and that is an incredible savings. So this truly is the best in class solution that exists, I believe, with everything regarding water. And it's just a matter of educating people and getting the information out there, because they're so overwhelmed. So, and now there is funding for the schools to address some of these issues. So now is the time. It's We've got a lot of people we need to help.
We really do. And you brought up a couple of key points, right? So now is the time for all those reasons. But it's also the time because, unfortunately, they're in a position where there's so much external pressure
Mhm.
that the decision is going to be made regardless of the options that are in front of them. The
Mhm.
decision is just going to be made based off of the options that are in front of them, if that
Right.
makes sense. And that's why it's been so refreshing for me and my team, that as we're having these conversations, I call it consultative selling. Yes, at the end of the day, our job as salespeople is to sell a lot of product. That's why I challenge them to do all the time. But when you can truly create a win for your customer that will not only affect their everyday job, right, making it easier for them to manage the building or manage the school, but you're also putting them in a position, because they're with their peers all the time, and those peers will thank them, and everybody loves that self gratification. Like when the teachers and the staff in the building know how great the water is, and it becomes a forward facing message to the community, and the parents know that, you know what, I've got this laundry list of pressure on me, and I'm thinking about all these things, and yes, I would love to think about my kids' safety, but I've entrusted that to you, Mr. or Mrs. Superintendent or school facilities person. And then now when that's reciprocated and the education is done forward facing to the community, and the community hears the solution and what it means to them, it's really gratifying for everybody involved in that process. And so you're right. My biggest challenge on a daily basis is how can we amplify our voice so that we reach those decision makers. So ultimately they're looking at the opportunity in front of them versus making a decision based off what someone, an incomplete solution someone may have tried to slip by them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And regarding the communication element, when you mentioned the social media aspect with Northwestern, that's how people communicate. And now
University
more
outside
than
the city of
ever,
Chicago.
oh, I'm sorry, that place. But when you mention communication, okay, and at Protect X International, this is a huge part of what we help everyone do, communicate the solutions that we're applying, that we're able to come in and help them implement to everybody trickling down. So in this situation, it would be the district, right? The superintendents, and then the teachers and the parents and the children and their friends and everyone in the community. So it just goes on and on. But social media is where people are living now more than ever. And that message is multiplied very, very rapidly. So what better way to spread positive messages? I mean, we know how quickly that negativity spread and then the results that had. So we want to come in and do the same thing in a positive light in terms of educating and getting the message out and helping people understand the impact of the water. And also just to dissolve the fear so that we can get back to just living naturally, and especially with the kids. So there's so many social aspects to this, and feeling safe and the education and all of it really, really matters. So
There's something to
this
be
is
said about peace of mind, right? I mean, it's a completely forgotten part of our lives.
right.
And we've all gotten that call, right? The bad news call where, we're executives, we run companies, and when you get that bad news call, you deal with it. That's our job, right? But the idea that I also have peace of mind, as I run my organization, that there's certain things that I really don't have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Water quality should be part of that as any leader. And really, that's that's been an exciting part of us. And like another quick aside, this is a story I can actually talk about. So we started working with MIT, and it was very big deal for us to be invited into MIT, and we started working on their rainwater harvesting system. So sustainability is a big part of what we are, and so we do this great system over there, up in Cambridge, and we're reclaiming rainwater and using it for cooling towers, and we're saving them all this money and energy. And then they start looking at what our filters do, and they're like, well, hold on a second. We've got other issues here on campus. Do you make smaller filters? And then we have this conversation like we're doing now. And so although we're working on a complete campus-wide water management program like that other university, the first filters we put in were in the president's residence. So the president of MIT
Amazing. That's
is drinking our water and entertaining some of the greatest. Well, we'll go back eventually to entertaining dignitaries again, and all the people, the donors that they would entertain on a regular basis. But to get a message from his wife saying that their family loves the fact that they're no longer throwing away plastic water bottles. It mattered to them, and that they trusted us was pretty remarkable. And it also was to your trickle down effect. The message back was pretty powerful that we wouldn't give it to our students if we wouldn't drink it ourselves. And here you have the president of the university drinking our water in their private residence. It's pretty cool.
That is a great story. It is. That's how it should be. I mean, that's what leadership is all about. And with the whole COVID thing and all the fear, and the more energy we can put into educating the children about their health, that is important as well now. So bringing
And
their,
you'll find they care the most. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you'll find that they care the most. I just sent Carol an article yesterday in Delaware
I saw
County, which
that.
which is a county right outside Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The students did a fundraiser because they wanted their drinking fountains replaced, and they wanted filtered water in it. And so the students did their own fundraiser. They brought the money to the district and said, "Here, replace it." And we've got another district in Texas where we've got a very active PTA, where the moms are organizing and they're saying, "Look, we've got a better option. Just look at it." And the district looks at it and goes, "Yeah, we would have done that if we knew it existed." Thank you.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
really a really welcomed message.
it is. Yes, and it feels good to feel good, right? And to help other people understand what their options are and that they have control and impact over their own health and environment. So we're largely about that as well. Patrick, you are amazing and so knowledgeable, and I really appreciate your time and everything that you have shared. Our job is now to share this information, educate people, and come out and do an assessment for them and increase their understanding of what's available. So if anybody on here has questions, unless Patrick, you have something else you'd like to share, we can open this up for some Q&A.
No, I'd love to answer any questions from the team, and again, I so appreciate what you guys are doing, and looking forward to like you mentioned, helping people with peace of mind.
Yeah, we put a lot of time and energy into all the research and development and weeding through everything that's available. And this is absolutely the best in class solution available.
Thank you.
Does anyone, I'm looking at your little squares. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, scalability of the product integration. It's the examples you're giving are larger scale. How far down the chain do they go? Do they go to a mom and pop store, you put in a fountain there, or is it kind of a scalable solution that usually it fits something like medium or large size companies?
Great question. So our MOQ, or minimum order quantity, is 1.
Okay, perfect.
Wow,
and
that's
we're
good.
to give you a perspective, we're working on a program now to export 80,000 units to South Africa, for them as well. From a size standpoint, we talk a lot about point of use, which are smaller filters. But to give you a perspective, we have a full commercial lineup. So our largest system is actually 1,200 gallons per minute.
Okay. Do you have any that are off-grid solutions too, for people in cabins or camps or that sort of thing?
Great question. So we actually work with a company out of New York called the Safe Water Network.
Okay.
But they're actually a team of amazing people, but they're led by one of the top surgeons at the Hospital for Special Services, which would be a spinal hospital, who happens to be from Ghana. So their focus is on West Africa, where they come in and they bring drinking water to remote parts of Africa. So their program is actually small, shallow wells, diesel generators, pumping the water up, running through a triple clear system, and then dispensing free water to people. And long term, we're looking at even doing programs where they can erect small 30-bed hospitals in remote parts of Africa using that concept and delivering water. So there's a bunch of tweaks we do to our system design, just to build in some checks and balances, because our technology works without any electricity. The technology itself works without any electricity, very little pressure to operate it, no wastewater, but more importantly, no chemicals. And so it's really big part of why we think it's so special. But when you're talking about being off the grid, or even in situations where we're talking about residential well water, I have a unique design that my team developed so that we have some level of checks and balances in there, redundancy, so that we make sure that there isn't any issues.
Okay. And maybe one more question, I'll throw it to anyone else. I don't want to hog it. For irrigation, such as farming or agriculture, that sort of thing, is there solutions in that field also, like on a bigger scale, I guess?
Yeah, I would tell you that we've looked at it, but we haven't had the right part. So we, on a much smaller scale, on our rainwater harvesting side, one of the key benefits that we've been able to add to the equation, so that we don't, so often with rainwater harvesting systems, they're a great idea until someone looks at how expensive they are, and then they end up being value engineered out. And so what we've done is we've taken the concept of reusing this water for things like toilet flushing. And like I mentioned, we reuse it for cooling tower makeup, which is a huge demand in the system. But we also have a number of systems that will also use that same water for irrigation.
Okay.
So we yes, but not, I don't believe actually answering the question you had in pure agriculture. We've talked to two of the largest irrigation companies. You could guess who they are. And those conversations just never really went anywhere. Mainly because I think, just weren't talking to the right people.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think there's a lot of how do we say it politically correct? Emerging indoor growing going on in communities, and I know Denver has a bunch of that also.
Well, I can share with you that Cresco Labs is one of our largest customers.
Okay.
We're not, in that particular case, we're not filtering their irrigation water, but we reclaim their condensate water.
Okay.
And reuse it. And as you can imagine, so the one thing about irrigation in that environment is that there's a very specific cocktail of nutrients and fertilizers that they use. So their incoming water is less of a concern because there's so much chemistry that goes into that water before it's used. And that they take care of that usually with chemistry. But where we're able to really help Cresco is that we reclaim that water so that they can reuse it.
Excellent. All right. I will go on mute. Let someone else talk.
It's legal here in the States. You could talk about marijuana.
Yeah. I know a guy I know here owns a company down in Colorado that does that. So it's bigger here in BC because they're known for that sort of thing, but it is something that I thought would fit this either on the air filtration side or the water management side. So it's good to see you've got a foot in there. So
sure.
Yeah, another beautiful thing about this is it doesn't, like when we're talking about some of our other solutions globally, like in Canada, we have to pass certain requirements, right? Like, and with the filter, none of that would be applicable, correct? Like there's no, I mean, we're not talking about any kind of chemical. It's just.
Well, it'd be a question we need to look into, Michelle. So yeah, we carry Nsf certifications here for the US, and I actually have a program going now in Australia with a team where they're looking at they're doing their due diligence to see what we might need to apply for before we come to market. I can tell you we were covered for South Africa, so we're able to export directly to South Africa the same product, same packaging that we have here in the States that you've seen. So I think it's really a market by market basis.
Okay, yeah, that's something definitely to investigate and explore, and we'll be doing that with all of our solutions anyway, but it seems like this would be much simpler. It could be wrong.
It should be. It should be. And if you look at it, like there's a case in point in the United States, because we're making such strong microbiological claims, and to give the folks an idea, the biggest claim we make is 4 to 6 log reduction of bacteria. So that's 99.9999%. And that puts you into a treatment category. But the way code is written in the United States, if you're treating the product, you need to have a whole separate set of licenses and training. And as we've done more larger public jobs, I think we're up to like 5 or 6 states now where we've gone to the state plumbing board and they continue to maintain that we're just a mechanical filter. So from a facilities standpoint, it alleviates a tremendous amount of cost and pressure because they can maintain it like they maintain all their standard equipment without having an outside third party or hiring someone that's a certified purveyor.
Yeah, that's great to know, actually. That's interesting.
It's a fun onion, right?
Question? Yeah, well, there's so many important things to understand about it, but basically it comes down to the safety and the health of our kids. And I think when we're really addressing the schools, like you said, it's the ideal environment because the timing is perfect. The need is significant and vast, and we're dealing with people who really do legitimately care. So.
And the one thing I would add too is the simplicity to implement.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have a solution, but if that solution is either so expensive or so difficult to implement, is it really a viable solution? And I feel like our team has covered, covered those angles where it's definitely safe, but it's also ridiculously simple to implement.
Does anyone else have questions?
You've answered all my questions. I've been writing notes and you've been answering
I've been watching.
Patrick covers off. I'm writing notes and then you check it off. So I have to go back and check it off. But the only question I do have you ever had any implementation problems with your filter not fitting a certain model? Like, because there must be hundreds of different manufacturers doing different types of installations for these different fountains, right? So have you had any problems? That's my question.
So it's a great question. And I would tell you that it's an assumption that we also made, but we're able to debunk. And so as scary as it might sound, there's 4 companies that are in this business.
Okay.
You've got LK, which is by far the largest. Over 90 LK, ELKAY. They have over 90% global market share.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Could you fathom that?
Wow.
Now,
No.
if you look at their parent company, it happens to be owned by a gentleman named Warren Buffett. So you can get a perspective of how that happens. So now you go to number 2 in global market share, right? A distant second, but number 2 is a company called Halsey Taylor, HALSEY Taylor.
Okay.
Also owned by the same gentleman, owned by the same parent company.
And what percentage does he have?
It depends on the market. And then the third is Murdoch, who I mentioned that we partnered with.
Okay.
So the only other company is a company called Oasis. Oasis has got some strong parts, and some of their markets, they've got pockets that are strong. They recently restructured from a bankruptcy situation, so we're starting to see them more and more. But it's really very targeted. So now you go back to your question. So we obviously make filters for Murdoch because we make equipment. So if you run across Murdoch equipment, we can either replace it with new units, or we've got a retrofit kit that will update the existing unit to this new level of filtration.
Okay.
And then if you look at LK and Halsey Taylor, they happen to use the exact same filter. So you're right that there are not hundreds of variations, but there's 20s and 30s of models that are available that you run into. But like a dishwasher, right? You always hear the example of dishwashers. Once you take the face off it and the electronics, the core part of the dishwasher is probably made by 1 or 2 factories. We used to say it all the time in the VCR industry and DVD players. Like,
What's
up
that?
until
What is that?
So they're from about the mid 2000s to currently today, there's a single factory in the world that makes the core components to a DVD player.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So now you'd say, well, who has DVD players anymore, right? It's a business that's going like that. But as businesses go like that, right, someone gobbles it up, because even though it's a dying business, it's still a massive one. And so for Christmas, Santa Claus still brought my 4-year-old twins DVD players for the car. And it killed me to have to buy them because I'm like, ah. But anyway, going back to your question, there's a filter head inside the unit, and LK and Halsey Taylor use the exact same filter head. And so that's why we're confident our solution.
So you're covered. Okay. That's great to know, because I would have assumed there was many more than 4 major companies. So that's
you'll be shocked. Yeah, you'll be shocked now that, like, it's like anything else. Once you see a color car or you see a brand of a car, you're like, I never saw that BMW before. And then you see it 100 times in the next week as you walk around. It's always mind-blowing for our partners once they, on the sales side, once they start thinking about bottle fillers and hydration stations, that they're everywhere you look. And I will be shocked if you don't also come back and go, they're all LK. It's the same company everywhere. They're just a giant player.
So does LK have your filter, like that exact one, or that's where you guys are differentiating, that you do more within one filter?
Correct. We do tremendously more. And so Michelle can share with you, we've got a comp chart we built for really, it's a simple one-page cut sheet, but there's a nice clean comp chart on there that says this is what and the filter they use is called Water Serenity Plus. So that's their own brand of filters. And so you have Water Serenity Plus, or carbon block filtration does this, and this is what Forcefield does.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. If I neglected to already do that, I'll make sure you get that. So any other questions?
Just one quick one. How many people choose the like, do you find more people choose the retrofit over the full-on unit changeover?
So I would tell you it's the retrofit, if from a volume standpoint, not even close in terms of how it outpaces.
Okay.
Because it's expensive. You know, the average
Yeah.
unit is going to be $1,500 to $2,000 a unit for them to buy versus buying a filter for $400 that they have to change once a year. The mathematics are staggering. One of the things I would tell you is my team's go-to-market strategy has been through consulting engineers, plumbing engineers. So we've been solely focused for the last 6 years on new construction. So
New
in that
construction,
world,
okay.
because it's specified equipment, it's almost all new equipment. With the
Yep.
exception of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, they're the only ones who leave it up to the plumbing contractor to either put in an LK, Halsey, or ours. But then they require our filter in it no matter what. That's how
Okay.
they wrote their standard. But when we approach like our again, that story from Georgia is what we see the majority of the time, which is, look, we can save you a ton of money and get you safe water today. Here's a good process for it. But you really should look at an improvement plan, you know, and everybody always throws it into the 3-year plan. And then you see equipment, you know, maybe replacing 10 or 15 a year versus needing to replace 75.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
The last area I'll leave you with that should never be overlooked, but Michelle wanted to focus on hydration stations, but because I have you two gentlemen's ear and John's listening, is ice machines. So we have point of use filters for ice machines. And there isn't a facilities person I work with, especially in medical, because they're more aware because they test. But filtering ice machines, hospitality, schools, universities, and then obviously hospitals and medical is critically important.
Definitely.
Sorry, Michelle, I just had to slide that in there.
No, I've had such a hard time with the ice. I won't drink anything with ice in it after I met you. I'm like, what's in this ice? I'll just wait till I get home.
Yeah, I don't use ice machines. I've seen some of them, and it's rather disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your hospitality portfolio, those people need to be looking at that.
Yeah, they do. It's awful.
Help them see the truth.
I've seen some staggering stuff. So it's like, yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on the ice machines. Yeah, no, you probably wouldn't go to some of your restaurants.
Yeah, I used to own a restaurant, and now I'm remembering the weird things that would happen anyway. So yeah.
And how often did you clean your ice machine?
That's why I was saying that the webinar is about over. So
there you go.
That was then. This is now. Yeah. And it's all
know.
About education, right? You don't
think
about
awakening.
That stuff. Who's thinking about there's so many other concerns. Nobody thinks about their ice machines.
They don't.
No. So everyone, Patrick, thank you so much. Again, you always over deliver. I am so grateful to have this opportunity for everyone, and I will be editing this video, and we'll be sharing little pieces of it, and I will also share the whole thing with the people that were actually in attendance, so you can expect that to come to you along with the other information, and we'll be talking again soon. Thank you for being here today. I actually have another meeting in like 2 moments, so I will say farewell, and I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful, beautiful day. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Patrick.
See you.
Nice meeting you guys.
but
Nice meeting you.